Yes, we don't produce iron. But to produce steel for export is a very capital intensive industry. And you can only export in the region, isn't it? So it's very capital intensive. As you know, the steel industry, some of them are philanthropists in this region, cement, all sorts of things, very capital intensive. But if you go to other places, if you're talking about creating jobs, Bangladesh, we started doing garment EPZs around the same time. They only did a few years ahead of us. Today, Bangladesh is exporting $30 billion worth of garments. It's just overtaken China. Our EPZ are only doing $250 million, employing something like 30,000 people. The Bangladesh industry employs 4 million people. In fact, it has dominated their economy so much that it accounts for about 90% of their exports. If you go to and track our GDP, when we were starting in 1990, our GDP per person was higher than Bangladesh. They overtook us about 4 or 5 years ago, and now they're talking why? Because they were able to aggressively pursue a labor-intensive industrialization strategy. But ours is very captured by capital owners. That's why we go for capital intensive. Now, finally, which is something we haven't focused a lot. If you look at all those labor-intensive export industries, where are they located? They are located in port cities. They are located at the coast, because that is where it makes sense to bring in raw materials, take them off the ship, process them, put them back on the ship, and take them out. Now, when we did our first EPZ publicly funded thing, we put it in the river. So, because our thinking of our economy, you know how we think about our economy. So, you bring in the materials, you ship them all the way up country, and then you ship them back again. How can you compete? You cannot compete. So if we are talking about labor-intensive manufacturing, even though it is not a major sort of sector in the coast today, this is the only place it makes sense to make a center of labor-intensive export manufacturing. Put that in the charter. Thank you.
Now let's welcome our Deputy President, Chief Hustler, William.
Thank you very much, good people. I think we are in the final stages of this meeting. There are a couple of speakers that will come and speak just to wind up. We have been here from yesterday. We have listened to the technical team that was put together by the coast leadership and professionals, and they have done a very commendable assignment. My team here and myself, we have also sat through this engagement, and we are very happy that the level of engagement, the depth of understanding, and the passion with which we have seen your participation actually gives me confidence that we are actually making the steps that would change our nation. You remember, we committed ourselves that we are going to change the conversation in our nation. And I'm very happy that we have sat here for 2 days. And the conversation is a different conversation than from what we are used to in our political space. This conversation that we've had here for 2 days was a conversation not about us, the leaders, and positions. The conversation we've had here is about the people and their issues, ordinary people and their issues. And I'm very happy that the conversation in Kenya is changing. And leaders are at the forefront in changing this conversation so that the conversation is not about the leaders and positions and their interest, that we have actually moved the conversation from that of identity, this community and that community. We have moved it to a conversation about interests of ordinary people, of farmers, of traders, of pastoralists. The conversation is about coconut and cashew nut and bananas and what we can do in those agricultural value chains to make more money for farmers so that we can get more taxes and we can get access better markets and be able to create more jobs through value addition, agro-processing, and manufacturing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conversation of our lifetime. The conversation that is going to propel this country to the next level. For a long time, we have been hostages and prisoners of a conversation about tribes and positions. Today, we want to liberate ourselves and liberate our nation, to have a honest conversation about ordinary people and their issues and their businesses and their agriculture, so that we can truly emancipate our country from the shackles of poverty and underdevelopment. I am very passionate about this discussion because as Deputy President, I have had an opportunity to be at a pedestal where I can relate and understand what government can do if it has the right focus and if it has the correct perspective and if it is engaged with the issues that are a priority to the citizenry. We can actually change our nation in our lifetime. The discussion we've had here about, number one, ensuring that the conversation changes, that the conversation is not about identities and communities, that the conversation is about interests of people, ordinary people, and their business, and their farming, and their issues. That is the conversation that's going to change our country. And let me say the following, that in this framework that we have provided, there is going to be a lot of input that's going to be done by the economic team here, that the economic team and the leadership and the professional people in this coast region must now take this down so that it is not the top down, it is not the leaders, but it becomes the bottom up. It's about the people, their issues, and how we can get the people and their issues to begin to ascend the ladder of progress, working together. As you work on this economic team and economic model, and you've heard it from us that we want to share in the economic model that will change our country from being a top-down, leaders first, big business first, to bottom-up, people first, ordinary business first. As we work on that model, we must think about three things. Number one, we must think about how do we put money in people's pockets? How do we ensure that the millions who do not have a job, we have, using economic instruments and policy instruments, create deliberate government policy that creates jobs. So that if the housing program can give us 2 million jobs in Kenya, how many of those 2 million jobs will be at the cost? How do we put money in people's pockets using the agricultural value chains we have? Cashew nut, coconut, the whole agriculture sector, bananas, the pastoralists and their camels and cows and sheep and goats. How do we create the relevant value chains to make sure that we put money in people's pockets? How do we empower ordinary business so that where they are making 200 shillings, we can enable them to make 500 shillings? How do we create a financing model where ordinary people are not paying 2,000–3,000% interest for them to get access to financing? What government policy? How do we create a fund equivalent to CDF to ensure that we finance ordinary business at the grassroots? These are the discussions we need to have. And how do we build our savings so that instead of borrowing money from countries where they are saving, we provide the infrastructure and the culture and the necessary legal instruments for us to enhance and expand our savings, so that instead of borrowing from others, we can borrow from our own savings to finance our own development and begin the journey to reduce on borrowing that is threatening our nation. So this is an engagement we must have experience, and I am very happy that the leadership of the coast, 6 counties have come together. I want to thank the members of parliament who are here. I want to recognize the professional groups that are engaged in this meeting, and leaders at different categories that are engaged in this exercise of a new conversation in Kenya that is going to focus not on leaders and positions, but going to focus on ordinary people, their interests, their businesses, the agriculture that we are going to do, the agriculture in this region, and how we can develop the different value chains, make sure that markets are available, both local and foreign, so that we can expand the economy of our nation. I am particularly impressed that my economic team, led by David Ndi and his team, and the economic team that you have put together, seem to be reading from the same script. There is quite a lot of synergy that I have already witnessed, and therefore it means that going into the future, we should be able to achieve a lot more in a shorter time and be able to ready ourselves for how we are going to move this conversation into a charter. And I believe that that charter, I am prepared to sign a charter with the people of this coast region on what needs to be delivered on our economic project. Because I intend to keep my word. I know there is a lot of misunderstanding, there is a lot of negative perception about politics. But I want to promise you that it is our duty, it is our responsibility as citizens of this nation to work together so that we can march our nation into the next level. So with those many remarks, I am truly grateful to both teams that have come together. We are now looking forward to the leadership and the professional teams from the coast region. We are looking now up to you to take this conversation to ordinary people, to the mama mboga in our trading centers, to the cashew nut farmers, to the coconut farmers, to the fishermen, and what we need to do to build the necessary infrastructure, cold rooms, fishing here, and everything else that is required for us to tap into the blue economy that can contribute significantly, not just to the financial well-being of the people in this region, but to the ultimate economic well-being of the nation. I want to thank you very much that we have had this wonderful conversation. I know there will be questions that will be asked. We will all be here so that we can listen to you on the content, on the frame of what needs to be said, what needs to be done. Let me ask my brother Josephat Nanok, the governor of Turkana County, who has graciously accepted to assist this hustler movement in coordination, especially of the various teams that we have, so that we can be focused, we can be organized, we can be synergized in making sure that we deliver on this conversation. Josephat. Then after Josephat, we will now hand over back to Omar Hassan and the coast leadership.
Your Excellency, the Deputy President, all the elected leaders present, and those who are aspiring, plus also all the professionals. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think it is very difficult to speak after Chief Hasla has spoken, because he has provided a vision, he has made a political commitment, and he has said he wants to work with the people. And I think the Deputy President has made pronouncement today. He has made pronouncements in the past. And he's talked about kuunda serikali na mahaslas. He's talked about that very much. And he's talked about working with the hustlers and engagement with the hustlers. Tutazungumza na wao. And I think basically what we've heard him say, and together with Reverend D, is the elaboration of what that means, bringing the hustlers on the table. Kulete mahustlers kwa meza, tuunde serikali pamoja. I think it's basically that process that Coast Province leaders have gone through today, telling us what the priorities are. and for the Deputy President also telling us what he thinks and what his vision is moving forward in terms of taking Kenya to the next level. And listening to the coast presentation, you've brought out what are the key interests to your people. Social interest, economic interest, ecological interests. You brought those ones very clearly. And they cut across. I think I look back at the area where I come from in Turkana, I find a lot of semblance to the interests that the coast people have brought out. And essentially, as was elaborated, both your priorities, together with which the team supporting the Deputy President has articulated, all of them agree in one way or another. And what are the tenets of that vision? It's about equity. I think what you could basically say, gawa sawa. I think that's what people want. It's about public participation, which our constitution emphasizes on. And I think many of you watched the ruling by the High Court just the other day on BBI. It talked about people being the center of the constitution. They talked about public participation. And what that vision talks of, and I think it talks to the coast people, it is about hope. That your problems can really be addressed with a serious government. A government that is functioning, a government that has a political will to provide that hope. It is about empowerment. I mean, 10 million hustlers, informal sector empowered. It means very big for the coast economy, but also for the Kenyan economy. So, politically, because politics is about interest, just as was emphasized by the Deputy President, it's about interest. If these are the key interests of the coast people and the coast leaders, what else remains? Is taking these issues down to the locality and having people debate them and discuss and own that process. We must create a mass movement of believers that wheelbarrow that was laughed at, it is not just a mere symbol, but it's a representation of how those who are in the bottom, complete bottom of our economy can be lifted up. And that lifting does not amount to creating conflict, class conflict between hustlers and those who have, and those who are in the middle or those who are in the upper part of the economy. No. Once the hustlers benefit, it is automatic benefit to the middle class and to the upper class. And I think that is how economies work. Because factories will still be there. Demand for factory products is going to be increasing if there is more money in the pocket of hustlers. And I think it's critical for us to know that we can be able to grow this economy and everybody feels happy about it. And the only thing that I can ask the coast people, invest in this. Invest in this vision that has a political will. Invest in it politically. I mean, it's rare to find a leader who tells you, let's sign a charter. Where did it happen ever? Where? Where did it happen in this country? And I think let's invest in this because I think it is giving us hope. Finally, I am from the Rift Valley. The Deputy President is just born there. We do not own him. He is owned by Kenya. Just the same way you have sat down to put your interests, we will, as Rift Valley leaders, also sit down to put our priorities and interests on the table. because that's what we want him to deliver on. And that process is not just here, but that process is going on everywhere. The West leaders from West Province are having the meetings. Nyanza are almost concluding the meetings. Nairobi is also on the discussion. Central Province, Central Region kick-started these discussions. The next one also, Northeastern, will also be sitting to provide what the priorities is. So that moving forward, I think we're only 2 months to an election year. Moving forward, we can be able to galvanize and say this is a strategy we think will help our people, and then we hold the deputy president, when he becomes a president, to account, and every other leader sitting here. One more thing, because one of the leaders here mentioned that that bottom-up is going to be anchored on devolution. It's indeed true. I think once this is anchored, it will make it meaningful for those intergovernmental organs, and particularly the summit, to have an agenda for the people. Because if the agenda is going to be discussing how we allocate the resources going to county governments and the national government to that bottom-up approach, let it be. So that we change away from present discussions that are just discussing problems and we don't get solutions to those problems. It should be the discussion about what reaches the people and how they should be able to gain value out of government. So, thank you so much. And we've learned a lot here. I think we will be consulting a lot more so that we can be able to firm up the dialogue and the manifesto that has been agreed on. But of course, work out that time frame and action plan on how that can be delivered. And I think it is possible. One thing David didn't say, he told us, look at the bottom up also from a business model. I think you forgot to mention about that. That Equity Bank, the success of Equity Bank, the success of Safaricom is because they adopted a bottom-up model, business model, based on the informal sector for those people who do not have access to banks, because it is difficult to get a bank in the most remote area of Coast Province. But those bottom-down models, bottom-up models have worked. And I think it is doable, and I believe that the goodwill that has been provided by the Deputy President is a serious one. That's why you are seeing us from all other shades of places. We have rallied here, and particularly representing the pastoralists, because those are the original Tanga. We are always Tanga looking for water and pastures. But I believe now we've seen where water and pasture is. I thank you.
Asante sana, partner. Now from the cost dimension, we had set up a technical team for the purposes of those who joined us, led by Professor Hassan Mochimako. In that technical team is Dr. Francis Fondo, there's Umra Omar, there's Shuma Mongombe, there's Stephen Mukesi, there's Janet Oben, and it is evolving to a membership of about 13 with the necessary gender balances in it. Also in that, as people who sit into it, is Mheshimiwa Baya, Mheshimiwa Hati Mashetani himself, just to give a political perspective in the planning. So now, on behalf of this technical team, we'll give Professor Hassan Mochimako some few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, to do the wrap up. And those who come after him will be able to moderate them, because the other ones were too senior. I can't stop the next president, I can't stop a governor who served 2 terms, but I can stop a Miyamoto.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Deputy President. Mine is to just briefly say what is our take home as a technical team. I'd really like to thank this team here for enlightening us on what we are thinking, and I'm happy that we are almost in concurrence. Our ideas can come together and we can be able to move forward. I am happy to say that the issues that we have raised, the sectors that we think can build the coastal economy, the blue economy, agriculture, tourism, trade and industry, natural resources and social sectors, that we are in concurrence that these are very important areas and that we need to invest in them. I think that one we have agreed. We have agreed that